One of the best roles, and why? So I'm really lucky. I've had lots of fantastic roles in my 30-year career. I've led multiple people and change projects, different HR functions, mostly internationally. So lots of ideas to draw from. But I'm going to, in terms of the best and why, it would be being mum to my two daughters, and best because it's taught me the most. We've been an adoptive family for 14 years now. They are dual heritage, mixed race, neurodivergent, so autistic, ADHD, dyslexic, and have a history of trauma from their early years, which were in care. I'm a white, university educated woman who's been working in financial and professional services for well, multiple years now, throughout my career from graduation. And so as they have grown, so have I, and their experiences have really illuminated the bias that exists in the social, educational and healthcare systems. And I've and kind of discovered the inequitable outcomes that evolve as a result of that. So that's really taught me, it's definitely taught me a lot. I could write a book actually about the things that I've learned in that, but particularly to be a fighter, I've learned to be a fighter on their behalf and relentlessly through that. One decision that I've made that aligns my work with my values is the decision to be open about having a disabling long-term health condition. I fell ill about 10 years ago with a virus from which I never recovered. I was eventually diagnosed with something called myalgic encephalitis, which I still can't spell, and chronic fatigue. It's an energy limiting condition similar to long COVID. I experienced a massive drop in energy. So my function now, which is significantly improved to where it was some years ago, is about 40% of its pre-virus levels. There's been times, so I spent about a year bedbound. So it was a hard decision because my working identity is very much, and my identity generally is very much caught up in being action orientated and energetic. Also too, I think I was mindful of, and people were telling me about, the stigma and lack of understanding there is in relation to disability generally. So we know there's a 30% employment gap between disabled and non-disabled people. There are 2.5 million people in the UK of working age who are not employed due to ill health, and that's increased by 500,000 people. So there's some risk attached to being open and certainly publicly. But then on the other hand, from a values perspective, openness, authenticity, integrity is a even bigger part of my identity. So in some respects, it was it's no decision. It's no decision at all. And then what I found out actually when I was open and started to write a few things online was that it mattered to people. It mattered to people that I was open and talking about this as a professionally successful person and also as a leader in HR too. Biggest thing I've done to create social impact, well, it's not the biggest, but it's the thing of which I'm most proud, is supporting Helen Musgrove and the University of East Anglia in their research around what works in enabling employees with disabling long-term health conditions to sustain work. I mentioned before that I'd written a few articles online. People had written, people were reaching out to me and contacting me and talking to me, and they were saying to me how desperate they were to work. They have value and talent to give, but they couldn't work, they said, because of unsupportive workplaces. And everything that I went on to research was reinforcing what they were saying. So supporting some research that looked at what employers are doing successfully to enable and support employees felt important. And Helen's research is great because it identified 5 drivers of work sustainment, which I'm going to see if I can remember, but inclusive culture was 1, employee networks 2, educated, empowered and supportive line managers, 3, autonomy to work flexibly was 4, and 5 was individualized and tailored adjustments. And all the conversations that I've had since that research, people tell me how much that resonates with their experience. It's what works for them. It's certainly, from my perspective, what works for me. So yeah, I'm really, really proud of that piece of research, and working alongside Helen. I would say it took me a while. It took me about 3 years to identify with and realize I was disabled. Up until that point, I had been focusing on getting back to health and pushing through at work. And I think also, I thought of myself as being potentially fraudulent if I described myself as disabled, and maybe taking away from others in some way. We think of disability. When we think of disability, we think of visible, we think fixed, we think lifelong. But my symptoms are fluctuating, invisible, and unpredictable to some extent. So I didn't seem to kind of fit that model, so to speak. And then after 3 years, I became severely ill. I was bedbound for about a year. It was awful. If I could have switched myself off some days, I would have done. And I sought hope and inspiration in others, and from others. And that's when I learned that my experience was not unique. 80% of disabled people are disabled in their working lives. 80% of disabilities are invisible. And I think, again, inspired by others, that's when I thought I want to use my professional experience and my network, particularly in HR, to play some part in building a better working world for disabled people in some way, in whatever small way, but some way. Proud moment and key milestone. I'm going to join those together in my career. So it would be leading EY support of ActionAble, and working with a fantastic team, Impact Match, in launching the ActionAble Impact Report at the House of Lords. Being in the room with Sarah Weller and Lee Smith, the co-founders of ActionAble, alongside 150 other leaders, advocates and role models in disability, and feeling that desire and that potential and that power for change. It was palpable. It was an amazing feeling, really, really magical, really powerful. So I would say that, and that was a milestone too. And it was a milestone because 5 years before, as I said before, I'd been bedbound, and I wasn't sure if I was ever going to improve from there. So it felt like an emotional moment and a really wonderful milestone at the same time. So one project or piece of work that taught me the most about impact, and the lesson I took away from it, was leading diversity, equity, inclusiveness for our European financial services business. We started out like 17, 18 years ago, making the business case for inclusiveness with leaders, with our leadership team. And now inclusive leadership is a cultural norm within EY. The lesson was, what does it take to make impact, to drive impact? And I identified for me, it was 4 key ingredients. 1 is ambition, 2 is discipline and execution, 3 stories, 4 data. Ultimately, it's about winning hearts and minds with a compelling vision, often one conversation at a time. Strategic advice that I've given more than once. So this might not sound strategic on the face of it, but it is, especially if you want to unlock the largely untapped potential of the 1.3 billion disabled people on the planet. And the advice is, assume competence in everyone and take a strengths first mindset. I mentioned before about the kind of lack of understanding in relation to disability. What the wonderful Kate Nash talks about, the soft bigotry of low expectations. If we assume competence and take a strengths first mindset, we empower people to lean into their strengths, into their experiences, into their skills, and they perform and thrive as a result. Businesses perform better and thrive as a result, and the economy overall grows. So one learning or piece of advice that I'd like to pass on to others who might be facing similar challenges to me. So one I would say to everybody, regardless, is we have one life, we have one body, we have one mind, and we should respect and value that as the finite resource as it is. In terms of others, if you're learning to live with a new diagnosis, disability, or long-term health condition, my main piece of advice would be kind to yourself. You are not a failure. You are not less than. This is something that's happened to you that you will learn to manage, and you will rise stronger. So the people that inspire me to create impact in my work, I'm going to answer that from two sides. The first is from a personal perspective. I'll start with my daughters, how they show up continuously despite the multiple obstacles that they face. I'm inspired by that. I'm inspired by EY's ability and neurodiversity network. People, all grades, all experiences, all backgrounds, sharing their stories, advocating for change, working to build a better working world for others. I'm inspired by them always. Catherine Hale was somebody who inspired me early on in my own personal journey and inspired me to share my story, and I'm always grateful to Catherine. Robbie Crow, I follow him on LinkedIn, and oh gosh, I learn every day from Robbie. So that's on the personal side. On the professional side, I'm inspired and want to follow those people that are working to change the system. So Gina Davis, the Gina Davis Institute, a lot of the representation that we see in film, TV, media today had its genesis in the work of Gina Davis, and speaking to industry experts with powerful data and stories relentlessly. So I'm inspired by her and their work. In disability inclusion, it's Sarah Weller, of course, Caroline Casey, Kate Nash, all working in terms of shifting the system to be more disability inclusive. And I'm absolutely following behind them and following their lead, and grateful to be doing so. Work joy comes from three places for me. Number one is driving change, and I get especially fired up when I have a shared vision with others about building a better working world in some way that others might see as impossible to realize. Then I really want to go for it. Secondly is coaching others and witnessing their growth as they discover the potential within themselves. And finally is my relationship with my team and colleagues. I have had a 30-year career and absolutely privileged to work with so many talented people along the way, and I'm grateful to every single one of them. So my favourite quote that I'd be very grateful if you would include, and why, is Benjamin Franklin said there are two certainties in life: death and taxes. I would add a third, and that's sickness and disability. We are all human. We all get sick. COVID absolutely demonstrated that. We are all likely disabled at some stage in our lives. It's just a question of timing and severity. So this is about all of us. This is not about them or others. We are all in this together. And if we all do more, then we all will win. And with an aging population, we win economically too.